Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker. Welcome to Generations of Grit, a tale of turf and legacy. After his conversation with Adrian, Elijah and Jamal sit down to discuss their next move. They continued to yield a considerable amount of power, though, only because they still had control of the flow of drugs into the neighborhoods throughout the city. The cartels, they continue to do business with them even though they got locked up. Because this is the thing when you're dealing with a cartel and you got those kind of plugs, it doesn't matter if you go to jail. It doesn't matter if you go to prison. If you can maintain all of the control that you need, if you can maintain the distribution of drugs and keep that money flowing in, they'll continue to deal with you. They won't abandon you. They won't go to anybody else. They won't go to your competition. They'll continue to deal with you because they're loyal like that as long as you make them money. That's what they care about. If you can't make them money, then everything's off. All bets are off. So what do you think Adrian is going to do? How can he really protect Marcus? He has no army behind him. We have to move on Malik first. That's what Jamal was saying to his pops. And he says, I'm not sure how he'll protect Marcus, but I do know that he will protect him with his life, said Elijah. But our next move will be against little Malik. We just have to figure out how exactly he's going to make his move, and then we hit him first. That's the only way we can do it. That's the only way the streets is going to respect it. Because when you're doing things like what they're trying to do on either side, it gets tricky. You want the streets to maintain and stay with you. And if you don't, even if you do what it is that you want to do, even if you knock the person off, even if you are able to secure another route, the streets won't respect it, and then they'll come at you. And the last thing you want is the streets turning against you. So this is what Jamal said. He said, okay, Pops, I'm on it. I know exactly who to talk to find out what little Malik is up to. The next day at school, Jack and Marcus ate lunch together. When they were alone, Jack thought about how he was going to tell Marcus that he knew a couple of girls that they could get with if he was interested, And his opportunity came to tell Marcus this a few minutes later when they were leaving the dining room. He leaned over and he told him, said, listen to me, Marcus. You know what I'm saying? They got a couple of girls in the old neighborhood that's interested in getting with us if you want to right now. Marcus was skeptical at what he was saying, because it's like, okay, why would anybody be talking to some other girls for both of them? You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, Marcus didn't want him to think he didn't want to be down with any girls. So he was like, cool. Now, Jack felt bad for lying to Marcus, but he didn't want to ruin the surprise for him and the Ravens, right? Got to keep in mind, remember, he didn't know. So when Jack got home, he called Lil Malik and told him that he had convinced Marcus to go with him the next week to see some girls in the neighborhood. That was the cover story. Lil Malik was pleased with how Jack had handled himself, because he had helped him advance what he was trying to do without anyone knowing that he was behind it. And that's the key to all of this, right? So now he had to make sure that everything else went off without a hitch. So when he sat down with his lieutenant, they went over every detail of the plan. And they decided that they would wait 2 days before the day of the fake party. And then they would call Jack and give him a new address to deliver Marcus to. The address will be one not associated with Little Malik or the Ravens. You see, that way, no one will be able to connect them to it. In case someone sees them or something gets out or whatever, he would have plausible deniability. And you need that when you're trying to do something slick and underhanded. You got to have a cover story, y'all. So the new address was going to be an abandoned warehouse close to a rival gang's territory. And they would hold Marcus there as a hostage. And eventually, they were going to kill him to send a message to Elijah that it's a new day. Because little Malik wanted that spot. He didn't want Jamal to have it. He didn't want Marcus to have it. He wanted it. And he wanted the plugs that came with it. He wanted the connections that came with it. Because if he was not able to satisfy and keep everybody well fed, pockets fat, then he would have no power over them. He would have no control over them. And then what is it? It's nothing. That's the key to having an organization. You got to be able to feed the people. And if he didn't do that, and he didn't do it the right way, it would cause a full-scale war, and he knew he couldn't win that. He didn't have the numbers to go up against Elijah and Jamal. He did not. Now, back at the prison, Jamal had reached out to his contact back in the old neighborhood. His name was Jimmy. And when Jamal wanted to know something that was going on in the hood, Jimmy was who he went to. He had an ear for everything. He was one of those types of dudes. You know how everybody got one of those types of dudes in the neighborhood, somebody that knows everything? This is Jimmy. Jimmy was better than the local newspaper. So Jimmy told Jamal that he had heard some things about what Little Malik was up to, and he was planning something big, but he wasn't sure, but it had something to do with Marcus, and that he would try to find out more details. But what he knew right now was that it involved somebody at the school with Marcus. That was all Jamal needed to hear. That's all he needed to hear. Because he knew if he could find out who it was at the school that was trying to help Little Malik, then they could get that person and find out what was going on. But they had to find out who that was. Now, Jamal and Elijah, they called Marcus on the phone. "What's up, Pops?" said Marcus. "Why are you calling me on this phone? You normally don't call until the weekend." Because, they had numbers that they could call, different phones that they used, because, again, like you say, the feds would probably be listening to these guys because they were still in rotation. Everybody knows how it goes. So he said, "What's up, son? I got your grandfather on the line, too." I said, "Hey, granddaddy, what's up?" Now, you got to remember, these to Marcus, Jamal, and Elijah were just his pops and granddaddy. So him saying, "What's up, pops," and "What's up, granddaddy," that was normal to him. Yeah, of course he knew who they were in the streets, but to him, it's his family. So Elijah said, "Hey, son, me and your dad have something very important to talk to you about." And it was serious. They wanted to make sure he was paying attention. And Jamal chimes back in. He said, "Son, there are some things going on that you don't know about that could affect you and your mother that we need to discuss with you. And we're going to ask you some questions. We need you to tell us what's going on." So Marcus sat in silence and listened to them explain what was going on with Lil Malik and how he was in danger. Surprisingly, he wasn't afraid at all, or at least he didn't show it anyway. He said, "Okay, Pops, tell me what I need to do. Before we get to that, I need you to tell me who you've been hanging around with, who you got as a friend." And he said, "Nobody, except for my friend Jack. But Jack is a wannabe. He's not a part of anything. He just wants to be." And then Elijah jumped in. He said, "That's the type that Little Malik would be able to trick into helping him. So, has he asked you to do anything out of the ordinary?" His father said. "Yeah, he told me the other day that a couple of females back in the old neighborhood wanted to get with us, and we were going to go see them this weekend." Elijah and Jamal looked at each other. That's it. That's when he sends the message, they thought. This is what it's going to be. So they said, "Do you know these girls?" "No, I didn't even ask him what their names were." Now Elijah and Jamal laughed and said, You're just like a teenager. You're thinking with the wrong head." But actually, it wasn't even that at all. Marcus just didn't want Jack to think that he didn't want to hang out. So he told him, yeah, but he was skeptical about the whole thing. So Marcus said, what do I do now? And then Elijah told him, said, look, don't let on to your friend that you know anything. Just keep doing what you're doing. And then he's like, I'm certain that he doesn't know anything. They're not going to tell him the whole blueprint. In fact, they're probably going to kill him once they have you. So you just keep doing what you're doing. Don't tip them off at all, because that would mess everything up. We got to take care of this. You understand what I'm saying, son? And he's like, yeah, I understand, Granddad. So they got off the phone with him. Now, Elijah called Adrian. Now, Adrian, this is the go-to guy. He said, what's up, brother? 2 calls in 1 week? You must be really worried. Elijah said, yeah, I found out how Lil Malik is going to take care of his business and make his moves. Oh, yeah? Tell me about that. He said, well, he's using some wannabe that goes to the same school with Marcus. His name is Jack. Elijah explained everything to Adrian, just like it was told to him by Jack and Marcus. Now Adrian had something to go on. He assured Elijah that everything was going to be okay. And then he got off the telephone. Man. What's my next move? Adrian thought. I can't go back to that lifestyle. Not even for Elijah. But I can't just sit by and do nothing. After much contemplation, he called this cop that he had built a rapport with named Jenkins. Well, he decided to call the cop. This dude here, he was from the old neighborhood. And Adrian met him one night when he was still with the Ravens while he was waiting to be bailed out on some trumped up aggravated assault charges that ultimately got dismissed because the witnesses and victims didn't show up to court as they normally didn't do. Over the years, he had invited Jenkins to talk to the guys at the community center, about staying off the streets, trying to build that rapport between the community and the cops. So he picked up the card and he dialed the number. Officer Jenkins, the voice on the other end, said, now listen, Adrian, even though he was out of the way and out of rotation, he couldn't do it. So when he heard Officer Jenkins' voice, he hung up the phone. Said, I can't call the police. I have to find a way to handle this myself, he said. Now, 2 days before this fake party, Lil Malik called Jack and told him that there had been a change of plans because so many people were going to turn out for this party to honor Elijah that they had to find a bigger place. And he gave Jack this new address right on the edge of town, right in another gang's territory. And he told him, he said, don't be late. Then he hung up the phone. Now listen to me now. Jack may have been a wannabe, but he knew the history of the Ravens like the back of his hand. And now this address that Lil Malik had given him was right on the edge of another gang's territory. He knew this. And he knew that they would never agree to let the Ravens come over there and have a party. Never agree to that. So he said, what's going on? Now he was starting to question everything that he had been told. I'm not sure what's going on, but I got to tell Marcus, he thought. I got to tell him the truth about what's going on because something don't feel right here. Now, he didn't know what was going on, but he had to come clean. So the next day at school, one day before he was supposed to tell Marcus about the surprise and get him to the area, he tells Marcus what's been going on about the girls and the date. He comes clean about everything. And Marcus said, look here, I need you to come with me. He said, come with me where? Where do you want me to go? He said, I need you to repeat everything you just told me to my pops and my granddad. Now listen to me now. This is a wannabe. This is a gangster wannabe. Now, he's finna have an opportunity to talk to the head of the Ravens and the number 2 of the Ravens. This is his opportunity. So Jack jumped out of his seat, shouting excitedly, "I'm going to be talking to who? What?" He started frantically pacing back and forth in front of Marcus. He then grabbed his backpack and said, "Let's go. I'm with it." So on the way to Marcus's house, he kept glancing at Jack. He was excited to be able to talk to Marcus's father and grandfather, you know? Marcus didn't get it, but to Jack, this was a highlight for him. He was about to talk to the head of the Ravens. This was blowing him away. And when they got to the house, Jack was awestruck at the size of the house, the bodyguards standing at the entrance, all of that. This is how gangsters live, he thought. But to Marcus, this was just his home. Marcus introduced Jack to his mother, then took Jack to his room upstairs. Marcus took his phone out and called his pops. On the second ring, he answered. "What's up, son?" said Jamal. "Hey, Pops," said Marcus. "I got somebody you need to talk to." So Jamal said, "Who is it?" "It's Jack." Marcus could hear Jamal telling somebody to go get Elijah, tell him to come in. He needed him for a second. So he said, "Hold up a second. You know what I'm saying? I got to get your grandfather in here." He said, "Have you said anything to him about what we talked to you about?" "No. He came to me about this. Plus, there's something else you need to hear." "Okay, go ahead and put the phone on intercom so we all can hear each other." So Marcus set the phone down on the dresser. Then he introduced Jack. "Pops, Granddaddy, this is Jack, the friend I was telling you about." So in this raspy voice, old school, how the old schools talk, right? Elijah said, "Hello, young man. I hear you got something to tell us." All mafioso. And Jack is blown away. He couldn't say a word. He was speechless. So Elijah said, "Hello? Hello? Is anybody on the phone?" Then Marcus said, "Hold on, Granddaddy." He's in shock. He's sitting here looking stupid. So Marcus slapped him upside the head and said, "Snap out of him and tell him what you told me." So Jack came to his senses and told Jamal and Elijah exactly what he had told Marcus. After a few questions, they told them to go downstairs and eat you something, and that they'd call them back in 20 minutes. Before they hung up, Elijah said to Jack, "Thanks for telling me about this. And if there's anything I can ever do for you, don't hesitate to ask." Jack went speechless again. Then click, the phone hung up. This concludes this episode of Generations of Grit, a tale of turf and legacy. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker. Peace, y'all.